Today we're going to look at the strength of acids and bases. There are some things that we already know about acids and bases. The first of those is that acids ionize to make hydrogen ions, or H+, also called protons. The second is that bases ionize and make hydroxide ions, or OH-. Strong acids and bases are strong electrolytes, meaning they conduct electricity well. If we put our bulb with our two wires down into a strong electrolyte like hydrochloric acid, we end up with a bright light glowing. Weak acids and bases are weak electrolytes. This is the same concentration, 0.1 molar, of vinegar rather than hydrochloric acid, and you can see that the bulb is barely glowing. Electrolytes are things that have ions in the water. So strong electrolytes have a lot of ions, weak electrolytes have only a few ions. But that doesn't have to do with the concentration. We're going to learn about that in this unit. So what can we conclude from what we already know? Strong acids and bases are also strong electrolytes because they make a lot of ions. Weak acids and bases are weak electrolytes because they make few ions in the solution. So let's visualize what a strong acid or base looks like. A strong acid or base will ionize completely. That causes the pH number to be far away from neutral. So a strong acid will be in the low range, 1, 2, or 3, or a strong base will be in the high range, 12, 13, or 14. Let's look at this strong acid HCl when it goes into water. Before it goes in, the H, which is the small gray dot, is bonded to the large green one, which is the chloride. When they go into water, they dissociate completely, meaning the H's, the small gray pluses in this picture, and the large green minuses are completely separated. None of them are still bonded to each other. Complete dissociation or complete ionization makes a strong acid or a strong base. In the case of acetic acid, we'll keep with our gray, meaning the hydrogen, and this blue ball will represent the acetate ion. When we put a large number of acetic acids into the water, we look over here and we see that most of the acetic acid molecules are still bonded together. So a weak acid or base ionizes less than 100%, sometimes a lot less than 100%. Down here, I've circled in red, there's only one of the acetic acid molecules that has dissociated into its ions. So we've got one ion here, or two ions rather, one positive and one negative, and none of the rest of these, even though they're dissolved, are producing ions. And without ions, we have a weak acid, and we also can't conduct electricity very well, so we have a weak electrolyte. Because there aren't a lot of ions, particularly hydrogen ions, or if this was a base, hydroxide ions, that means it will not stray very far from neutral, so it'll be close to 7. It should be in the upper acid range, which would be 5, 6, or even almost 7, or maybe in the low base range, which would be close to 7, 8, or 9. So a weak acid or base hovers very close to the 7 or the neutral, no matter how much acid we put into the water, because even though we put more acid in, which makes it a concentrated solution, it doesn't make it any stronger because only a few of the acid molecules dissociate or ionize in the solution. Now be careful. Don't confuse strength with concentration. Something like strong coffee may be concentrated, but that doesn't mean it's well ionized. Out in the world, when we talk about a strong solution, we're not using it correctly. In chemistry, a strong solution is one that is well ionized, and a weak solution is one that is not well ionized. We can have a strong solution that is concentrated and a strong solution that is dilute. We can have a weak solution that is concentrated and a weak solution that is dilute. The terms strong and weak are not related to the terms concentrated and dilute. Look at this graphic here, where I show a strong acid that is concentrated and a strong acid that is dilute. In the strong acid section, the acid is represented by HA, that's the hydrogen and the anion part. If you look at the concentrated solution, you'll see that it's mostly H's and A's. There's only a very few HA's that are still together. So in this concentrated strong solution, almost all of the HA's have split apart. In this dilute solution, there aren't near as many HA's, but those that are here are mostly all split apart. There are only a few that are still together. So both a concentrated solution with a lot of acid and the dilute solution with only a little acid, in these two cases, they're both considered strong solutions because almost all of the HA in both of these has split. Now look down at the row of the weak acids. In the concentrated representation here, we have a whole lot of HA's and only a few H's and A's have separated. In this case, this solution is just as concentrated as the one above it. There are the same number of H's and A's in the top as there are in the bottom. But what makes the difference between strong and weak is that in the weak acids, most of the HA's are still together, and only a few of them have split into their separate H's and A's. The same is true with a dilute solution of a weak acid. There are quite a bit fewer HA's in the dilute solution, but most of them are still together, and only a few of them have split. It's the splitting of the HA into H and A that makes it strong or weak. If almost all of them have split, then it's a strong acid, regardless of how much there is. There can be a lot or a little. With a weak acid, most of the HA's have not split. Whether it's strong, or whether it's concentrated, or whether it's dilute, doesn't make it strong or weak. Only how many have split. In the weak acid here, most of them have not. And in the weak acid here, most of them are not. The difference here is that this one is concentrated, this one is dilute. But no matter how much acid there is, a lot or a little, this is still a weak acid because the HA's are not splitting into two parts.